Hello. Again, we continue on a deep dive into Terrence McKenna. Something I didn't mention yesterday was, yes, the quote that I wanted to. Here we go. He talks about the eschaton, and this is in reference to time wave zero. I want to clear this up before we go on. The eschaton is a universal and fractal morphogenetic field, which was hypothesized to model the unfolding predispositions of space and time. This structure was decoded from the King-Wen sequence of the I Ching and was the central idea that evolved in the wake of the events at La Herrera, right? So it's a direct link. The experiment and then the creation of time wave zero. All right. Now that we have cleared that up, we need to talk about topic 3, the self-transforming elf machines. Okay, let's get to the meat and bones. I like to look into how Terrence describes it exactly. Here's one. When asked what are they like, and again, we must clarify. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between what are we talking about. Are we talking about the self-transforming elf machines themselves, or are we talking about the things that they were creating and subsequently wanted Terrence to seem to know or to learn how to do the same thing that they were doing, of creating this object. Now, it seems like which itself was then a self-transforming thing, you know. So it's okay. They are like exquisite interlocking mechanized things made out of ivory and glass and topaz and chrome, and they are carrying on at a furious rate. They have a life in time. Here's how it works. You have a dodecahedron or some other complex regular polygon so that it's made of surfaces, and then to each surface you assign a set of color and frequency changes, and then each surface can run its program independent of all the other surfaces. So you slowly build up a program on each surface, but then you can also cut into this polygon and remove chunks of it to reveal another polygon inside of it that can have different programs written for each of its surfaces, and then you set these things slowly rotating one in the other on several levels, and you're beginning to approach a really shoddy example of what these things are like that you see in this space. That's it. Interesting. You know, a really interesting description. And again, we must be aware that Terrence McKenna was no mathematician. So some of these details are maybe a little bit off, but, you know, as someone who can describe things, if that's what, it's fantastic. That's what it is, really. Particularly from my perspective, I've got this thing. It would appear to be the case that I've got a lot of the things. I'm building this thing. I've been building it for years. I've got this thing that seems to work when I look at it and I know what it's doing. I could almost he's almost describing it word for word. And I'm going to show you it because, yeah, this might be the geometry special. I mean, but it's worth it because we are talking about the self-transforming elf machines. Yeah, and what the hell are they? Okay, now, other than describing them, there's this other thing he's described, which is the way they communicate. And, but again, it seems hard to actually draw the clear, line between, is he talking about um, the thing that, is he talking about the visible language, right? Or is he talking about the thing itself? I suppose if it's a visible language, maybe it's hard to draw the distinction between the language and the thing. Um, I'm not sure if that's a valid connection, but it makes me think of these. That's potentially something I think about, yes. Um, okay, so again, when asked in the Valley of Novelty, it was either transcribed or it's written, I'm not sure, I'm sorry. I think it's transcribed. Terrence gives the following description. Okay. What they're like is, and in fact, this is probably what they are. What they're like is they're like 3 and 4 and 5 dimensional puns. It's not that the meaning flickers from A to B. It's that it's simultaneously A and B. And when the pun is really funny, it's an A, B, C, D pun, and it's simultaneously all these things. Well, that quality, which in our experience can only occur to acoustical output, or a glyph which stands for an acoustical output. In other words, a printed pun. A printed pun. I mean, if I'm going to show you something eventually in the next not too long, which I've got that described to a T. That's exactly what it is. It's a printed pun. Bizarre. But it's only a mechanism needed at the right place at the right time for the right person. Obviously, it seems right for Terrence McKenna to be that person, having met the third entity. I'm not sure, whether some of these descriptions are coming after meeting the third entity or before. It's an interesting idea. I'm not sure about the timeline on some of these details with Terrence's timeline of events. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so yeah, as I said, maybe it's time to get geometry. Where does one start? I'm not sure it is the best time. Maybe I should just go straight to the crux. For me, the crux is the third topic I want to. It's not even a topic. It's more of a disturbing afterthought. All right. When Terrence describes going to these spaces, he said on. I'm not sure if he's saying it happened on all occasions. The entities say goodbye, and they say it, deja vu, right? What the hell's going on there? Now, again, the only reason I'm raising it is because I found something like that in the thing, which I suppose I've got to show the geometry, otherwise it won't make any sense. Maybe strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. But all along realized that this concept was originally inspired by John Lilly, and found its concrescence with Terrence McKenna. I hadn't quite appreciated how much work he'd put into describing this object. And for someone who isn't a mathematician, he certainly had a decent enough command of the mathematical visual language to convey the message. So for that, I'm I'm quite impressed. I'm always impressed with Terrence McKenna. A crazy soul, but not crazy at all, and so intelligent, and I'm in awe of Terrence McKenna. I could have never have been what I am without him. So I have to say thanks where it's deserved. Okay, is it geometry time? Maybe. I think so. I think some of what I have discovered mathematically related to time wave zero also connects with these descriptions that I read out about the puns and the dodecahedron bit and all that. It's very specific, and I would appear to have something that ticks all the boxes of how he described it. And I didn't build it with his description in mind. I promise you that. It built itself in that sense. I just followed the leads. Yeah, all right. Look, I'm not going to get too geometry, but I would maybe like to show you an object. All right. So do you know, this will lead back to Terrence, let me assure you. Do you know of honeycomb? Okay, that flat hexagon, like all the bees, yep. We all know what honeycomb is. Now, if you actually thought about what the little pocket looks like where the honey's in, do you know what that is? Well, you can find many things on the internet about that. It's interesting. It's fascinating. But yes, that's sort of where we're going to start, is in the bottom of that pocket, we want to find an object. I'm going to show it to you now. Let's not get into the big fancy names, but it's a 12-sided object, all right? Now, I'm going to show it to you. Here, this is it. This would sit in the bottom of the honeycomb. This is the honey. This is the honey, right? This is it. It will fit in there snug, no problem. It was designed that way, and that's where it was born, and that's where it comes from. But the thing is, what I've done is also show you sort of like an X-ray model to get in and see what's going on the inside as well. So imagine if I just covered them with faces, all you'd see is 12 hands blocking, the view. But now I've taken the hands away, and you can look inside the object. And once you start to look inside the object, now we're going to start to look beyond the three-dimensional. We're going to start to look into the four-dimensional. Like, I'll show you simply how we do it. All right. If you look at this object, can you see the arrows? Can you see the arrows? Now, it doesn't matter which way you turn this object, those arrows will always look the same direction. Now, once you've got an object that is doing that, it starts to give you an indicator of what it would be. We're never truly going to see into the fourth dimension, but maybe we can bring out three-dimensional aspects of it. And this is kind of a three-dimensional aspect of the four-dimensional object. Now, this four-dimensional object is known as the 24 cell. She's a ripper. It's the best object in the universe, if you ask me. But I've got a favorite. This thing is awesome. There's not much else I want you to get from it for the moment. It's obviously going to get complicated, but can you look and see letters, right, on some of the, there we go, there's one. Any more? There we go. So there's 4 of them. They're on, sorry, wrong face. On there and, sorry, there. Yes. There's me with my mirrors, my God. This object, anyway. 24 cell. It's made up of 24 cells. Imagine this where can you see the letter? Have we got it right there? Doesn't matter what letter. There we go. So that's the floor of a teepee. Think of it like that. That's the floor of the teepee. It goes in. And the blue ceiling sits over it, right? So it's this bit there. That's one cell. Now it's made up of 24 of those things. All right. Now, I found a way to break it up into 24 cells like a necklace. There we go. Now, if you'll notice, there's something new. You're getting to see now this white side. It's not all white, but the white bit you couldn't see before when I had it in this form. You sort of, I'm giving away a little bit that it's behind, but it's not really behind. It's, if I'd done this properly, you wouldn't see any white at all. Right, I did it to sort of give some space to it anyway. But this is made up of the 24 cells. But they're now like hinged at each corner of this, Toblerone, hinged Toblerone type object, right? Now, that's what we discovered. There's this deep connection between that object that I've just shown you and the self-transforming elf machines. Now you can't quite see it, and I wish I had built the animation, and I will endeavor to. If we can make that happen, that would be awesome. I'm not I can't do it. Maybe years ago I could have, but I don't have the time or the resources. And but if someone wants to try and build this, I've got all the plans. And you see, if you really want to build what Terrence is talking about, I'll give you some idea of what's complex going on. I've pulled this object apart. All right, that's what I've done. And then what I did, instead of making it red and blue, so it's really chunky. So it went from red to blue to red to blue. I decided to make it a rainbow. Now I've taken some of the cells away, but this is the kind of thing that you might then end up with. So this is half of it. I've taken away, if you want, I've taken away the North Pole, and I've taken away the South Pole, and I'm sort of looking at the equator, which is that hexagon there. Now on each one I've decided to actually, put color and frequency changes, exactly as Terrence said, and I did it before I knew this quote, I promise. I'm not bullshitting that. Okay, so I would have all these, there's mathematical numbers there. They're just counting numbers, that's all. They're just counting different things. One's counting the number of which cell you're in. One's counting which color you're in. One's counting which circle you're in. Oh, this is what it's in. This is what yes, so there's different things being counted, right? And what I'm trying to emphasize is that this whole structure, all these numbers that's going to be occurring all the way on the inside. And remember, this whole thing, this is what Terrence said, setting one rotating inside the other. If you've got this little flower-like object, it is rotating because it's like a conveyor belt. Think of it as moving in like a conveyor belt. So it'll come in and round and up. So that whole thing will be rotating, right? And I'm showing you how it's got depth because I'm going to be, well, the whole idea is this whole thing, that's one, right? And I'm saying this thing's 384 deep. That's what it is. 384 layers of all this counting. That's all it is. It's counting and direction, counting direction, counting direction. And that's all it's doing. But it's 380. And that's just one, right? It's packed. It's just packed. And that's just one bit of the honeycomb. That's what's going on in the honey. I'm saying metaphorically, this is the honey, right? Because it's now the frame, right? We can now actually fully get what the frame is. And it sits in the 3D world, right? It sits within the volume of this rhombic dodecahedron. It sits in there. But in terms of the number of faces that this has, and if you count each face like that, 96 faces. Right? Go look up the 24 cell, 96 faces. It's the same object, all right? And just remember, if you're looking at a type of object that it doesn't matter which way I turn it, the arrows are always pointing in the same direction. They're never going to change, all right? I can do whatever rotation I like. You're always going in the same. The whole thing's always going in the same direction. The conveyor belt. It's a conveyor belt going in and up and out, like origami paper, and it's going all the way around. And it does this full elaborate circumference of whatever. The center of the donut, the what, the nothing. It's rotating around this, and in such a way that every single possible way of seeing it gets seen. That's kind of that's what it is. Because again, here we're only looking at one side of it. The other side is sort of buried in it. So there is a whole structure, and imagine it could be the photographic plate of everything that happens, of the ingoing and the outgoing. You've got to remember. So what I'm saying is that I'm sorry, I've misplaced it, but I did have it here. It's a spiral. It's a spiral. Where did I do? What did I do with the spiral? Apologies. That's poor on my behalf. I'm not sure if I'm going to